Hello, I'm Meredith Blackwell, and Don Pfister and I are here to do interviews for the Oral History of Mycology project. We're at the annual Mycological Society of America meeting, and we're in Gainesville, Florida, at the University of Florida. And we're in the hotel, the Hilton Hotel, which is on the campus. And the date today is the 13th of July, 2022. And Don, you are there, and we've been in these interviews, but Don Feaster from the Farlow Herbarium, and Terry, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Terry Torres-Cruz. I am a PhD candidate in plant pathology, and I'm working with David Kaiser, Penn State.
Great. And
So we do these interviews trying to get a sense of how people came to mycology and about their background, what the motivations and connections might be with discovering fungi, and was your family interested? Do they understand what you're doing? So kind of a general overview, if you can give us that.
Start where you were born.
So I was born in Costa Rica and raised there. My parents, when I was born, didn't get to go to college. My dad was he would harvest pineapples. That was his work. And then as I was growing up, he put himself through night school and became an accountant. And then years later, once my middle sister was born, my mom decided she wanted to go to college and get a degree in law. So she did that. And something that they, inspired me to do was to get a college degree later on, as soon as I was done with high school, because they didn't get that opportunity. I had no idea what I was going to study when I was finishing high school, but I ended up going to the Instituto Tecnológico, just like a technological university in Costa Rica, and I did an undergrad in biotechnology engineering. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it was fun. It was really interesting to see everything that we could do with different things in biology, and it just opened up my eyes to so many opportunities. And then when I was finishing my undergrad, we're supposed to do a small undergrad thesis for a semester, and I had heard about this mycologist that was Costa Rican. She had graduated from the same program I was on, and she was working in the US. And I had taken a class before my last semester that had to do more with fungal uses in biotechnology. So I was I had a little bit of interest in fungi. And then the person that I'm talking about is Andrea Porras Alfaro,
Okay.
And she was at Western Illinois University. I contacted her, attached my little CV at that point, and I asked if I could come to her lab to do my undergrad thesis, and she said yes. And I got a small scholarship from the Costa Rican government to be able to fly to the US. The scholarship was set to be for 3 months, so I had to do the full project in 3 months and write it up and go back to Costa Rica and present. Okay. But she is a great mentor, and she motivated me to look into opportunities to apply for grad school later on. And she provided the opportunity to stay in her lab. So I actually finished the 3 months for my little undergrad thesis. I went back home, defended, and then spent the holidays with my family for Christmas, and then came back to the US.
Right away.
Yes.
So what was the project?
It was, she said, there are all these samples in the lab. She gave me a book about fungi, and she said, look through the book and think what you want to do with the different samples that we have in the lab.
Pretty open.
Yes. So it was challenging to pick what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I looked through the book, and I found this fungi that are tolerant to heavy metals. And I thought that was cool. So I decided I was going to work with some soil samples that we had from the Duke Forest. And I supplemented media with different heavy metals and concentrations and try to isolate fungi that had tolerance to heavy metals. So that's how I first started. And I really liked the work that I was
And you found some?
Yes.
Which ones were they? Do you
There were
remember?
so many. Yes. We actually got to publish that work later on,
Oh,
once I was done with my
Yeah.
master's. Actually.
yeah, we talked to someone yesterday already who's working with Swillis and looking at heavy metals to the uptake. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really liked that. I really liked her lab, the people that were there. And then I started coming to MSA meetings and meeting all these really cool mycologists. Like,
In elevators, I heard you say.
So
Funny, I first met Don in an elevator at a meeting.
50 years ago, just about.
We think it's our 50th anniversary.
So now you're with David Geiser, and what are you working on now?
so I work with this recently described Fusarium species that is associated to the production of flower-like structures or pseudoflowers on yellow-eyed grasses. And those grasses are endemic to the northern part of South America, but the pseudoflowers have only been reported so far from Guyana. So that's where my study sites are, and I'm trying to describe different interactions of the fungus with the plant and insects.
It's very interesting. In my garden, I have Coreopsis, and almost every year I get Fusarium infections of the disc flowers, and it changes the way they look. You know, you can see from afar they have a different color on the disc flowers of the Coreopsis. And I think I cultured it at various times. It's a Fusarium. Never got very far with it.
Well, I think that would be something that they could work on if you're not going to work on it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we'll
'cause it's
have
kind
to
of
see
connected, maybe.
if it comes back in some
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, Coreopsis is a composite.
Yeah.
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 Asteraceae.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You're a Petri plate biologist, and you come from the part of the tropics that is so diverse. Do you have any experience getting out and seeing fungi, those beautiful Costa Rican fungi?
So
On the spot?
Don't feel too bad about it.
No.
I don't know any mushrooms, very few mushrooms.
well, it's interesting because like we don't learn a lot about fungi back home when you're growing up. So I had no idea. Basically, until I made it to college, like, you know, fungi exist. But back home, most moms would be like, don't touch that.
Yeah.
That's poisonous. And that's just how we grew up. We're not supposed to touch them.
And you didn't?
So I didn't when I was growing up. And like now when I go back and I'm like, this is this. And like I like show them that they can't pick them up. They can't touch them. And like tell them about everything that fungi can do. And now they're starting to be more comfortable about that.
No, there are different ways that people move into the field, and yours was through really fungal activity. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had a very good mentor who's now working at the National Science Foundation. Yeah. I saw she was going to give a presentation today.
Yeah.
So we'll have two people in the Mycological Society there. That's interesting. Two women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a long-term goal? What do you want to do? You want to be back home?
Yes, that has always been my plan. I think we have a lot of like really good scientists that are Costa Ricans, but unfortunately most of them are working abroad. And then, so my goal when I first came here was to like eventually return home so that I can give back to my community and my country.
Have you ever run into Mary Jane West Everhard and her husband Bill Everhard? Bill taught at the University of Costa Rica, and she's worked for the Smithsonian. So they do have a connection. They've lived in Costa Rica a very long time now. Yeah. You'll have to meet them when you go visit. They live just outside of the capital. I'll give you their addresses.
But my plan is hopefully go back, and if that's not possible, at least create connections where we can have collaborations with.
Yeah, I'm kind of marginally involved in a project where in Latin America where they're trying to look at various organisms and look for antiviral compounds that these organisms may be producing. It's partly driven by COVID. You know, COVID is looking for cures for COVID and so forth, but there's a kind of growing interest in looking at and trying to use these natural products that the fungi produce. So it's an interesting field, yeah.
And it's really interesting to me because a few years ago, the pharmaceutical companies stopped being interested in having people go out and find fungi or bacteria and looking for secondary metabolites.
Yeah, well, it was
cycles.
the case when I was in graduate school, for example, that a number of people would sponsor their field trips by getting in contact with these pharmaceutical companies, and they would be collecting soil samples that would be shipped back, and those soil samples would be, things would be grown out and screened from the soil samples. And, you know, part of it is finding the organism that's naturally producing the material. But these days, there's also all this synthetic biology. So, you know, you get a molecule from nature and you can tweak it into something that's more powerful, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it's changed that feature. But in this project, there are a couple good hits on antivirals, and one of them is a fungus.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there have been some real big fungal metabolites that have been very successful, but I hear the percentage is very low of what you collect and then get to the end, and it's actually useful. Yeah. So I actually, have you ever seen stink bugs in Costa Rica?
I don't know.
Hector Urbina, who's here, who's going to be here tonight, who was a student of mine. He's from Venezuela, but we collaborated with Bill Eberhard on it was a class project they had with his class in Costa Rica, and they found what we have called zombie stink bugs because they have a cardicepitaceous fungus in them. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah. So do you have brothers and sisters, or
I do. I have 2 younger sisters.
are they interested? Are they interested in fungi, or not really?
No, not so much.
So they're not going to be mycologists.
Probably not. One of them studied special education, and the other one is halfway through high school right now.
Okay.
She must be a marine biologist. So.
Well, the biologist, yeah. And there are lots of fungi in the ocean. Yeah. So it's nice that your parents set that good example about education. That's, you know, that's rare sometimes if people haven't been able to go to college and then they get a chance to. But that's very good.
And even if they don't probably appreciate completely what you're doing, they appreciate that you're there and that you're doing it, that you're following your desire to be an educated, mycologically educated person. Yeah.
And so do you get to go home for holidays?
Most of the time, yes. I used to have been in the U.S. for, I think, almost 8 years now, between the master's and the PhD. And at the beginning, I would get to go every 4 months or something like that. I would go often. But now things are getting.
Your research keeps you here.
Yeah.
But I try.
Yeah.
So, do you have advice for people who may be in your position of kind of working away in a vacuum, in a sense, without a lot of undergraduate help? What's your advice to folks who might want to pursue mycology?
I think probably like the biggest step is just like doing it. A lot of times, like we tend to doubt ourselves or think we might not be good enough to do something, and just taking that step, that's already a big change. And I have had the opportunity to work a lot with different undergrads that I have been mentoring, both in the lab, and I'm actually right now, this is the longest time I've gotten to spend in Costa Rica in years, but I'm working this summer with the Organization of Tropical Studies.
Oh.
So I'm a mentor for 2 undergrads at Las Cruces Biological Station right now.
Which one?
Las Cruces,
Oh, okay.
in the south part of the country.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, we haven't talked much about David.
Oh, yeah.
And so are you happy in a Fusarium lab? Is everybody studying Fusarium in the lab?
Yes.
Okay, so it's yeah, and Fusarium's a genus that is very broad and does all kinds of things.
Yes, and like, of course, it's mainly studied because of its importance as a plant pathogen, a mycotoxin producer. But actually, the people in the lab right now, we're working on more different projects than that. So I'm working on like the pseudoflowers, and we have another PhD student, Emma Wallace, and a master's student, Cheyenne McGee, who are working. They're both working on non-pathogenic strains on tomatoes.
Yeah, and you also have a chance, excuse me, to get into some medical work too, probably. Fusarium infections. I remember a couple of years ago there was contamination of contact lens fluid.
Yes. There were people in the lab before we got there that had done some work on that.
My one of the PhD students in my lab, Ning Zhang, did a postdoc with David, and it was about that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
So.
Well, thank you. It's good to get a perspective here.
Yeah, yeah. Costa Rican perspective. I don't think we've ever interviewed anyone from Costa Rica. Yeah. So anything else to add?
I don't think so. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Oh, well, thank you.